In the world of professional boxing, Rocky Marciano was a legend, a powerhouse who transformed the sport with a ferocity that has never been equaled. Starting from humble beginnings, he worked hard and became the only undefeated heavyweight champion in history, captivating the nation with his grit and explosive power. But amidst his retirement, tragedy struck and the sport would soon lose its most loved icon. Join us as we explore the life of Rocky Marciano and try to uncover the details of that tragic day. Rocky Marciano was born as Rocco Francis Marciano on September 1, 1923 in Brockton, Massachusetts. Growing up as the oldest son of 6 children in a working-class Italian immigrant family, Rocky knew the meaning of hardship from a very young age. When he was just 18 months old, he battled a near-fatal case of pneumonia, a brush with death that seemed to forge the extraordinary resilience he would later carry into the ring. His father worked tirelessly in a local shoe factory, and the family often faced the financial strain of the Great Depression, which meant that Rocky spent much of his youth working labor-intensive jobs, from ditch digging to factory work, to help support his family. He was a natural athlete, excelling in basketball and football during his high school years, yet Rocky's early years were more intensely focused on the baseball field rather than the boxing rings. But unfortunately, he had to leave school before graduating to contribute more to his family's income. Like many other boxers at that time, Rocky's path toward the ring was far from conventional. In 1943, during the Second World War, Rocky served in the U.S. Army stationed in Wales, where he was assigned with the grueling labor of unloading supply ships. There, in the midst of the military's demanding discipline and the camaraderie of the barracks, Rocky first started boxing, as it was the only way to earn a little respect and pass the long hours of the war. And surprisingly, his big break came on March 17, 1947, when after his military service, he stepped into the professional ring for the first time, knocking out Lee Epperson in the 3rd round. For his debut performance, he received a modest $35, initially thinking he might just return to his normal life and pursue baseball. That same spring, he traveled to Fayetteville, North Carolina to try out for the Fayetteville Clubs, a farm team for the Chicago Cubs. He had planned on becoming a professional catcher, but after 3 weeks, due to the injuries sustained during his military service, he simply didn't have the arm strength required for the position. With baseball out of the picture, he turned his attention to the only other sport that held a major significance in his life: boxing. Encouraged by his longtime friend, Ali Colombo, Rocky started training for boxing in earnest. And he was soon spotted by the legendary trainer, Charlie Goldman, who saw Rocky's indefatigable spirit and raw explosive power that others had missed. Rocky quickly started making a name for himself on the amateur circuit, winning the Golden Gloves tournament in Lowell, Massachusetts, and the New England Golden Gloves, which earned him a spot in the Golden Glove All-East Championship tournament in March of 1948. As he moved into the professional ranks, Rocky didn't fit the mold of a standard heavyweight boxer, where he was considerably shorter in wingspan than most champions. However, with the help of Goldman, Rocky mastered the low crouching style that turned his stature into an advantage, allowing him to throw upward-angled devastating punches that baffled his opponents. His rise to fame was meteoric, but not reckless. From his first professional win in 1948 to his dramatic title-winning knockout of Jersey Joe Walcott in 1952, Rocky was an unstoppable force. He became the Brockton blockbuster, the man who could take the hardest punch in the division and return it tenfold. After defending his title against icons like Joe Louis and Ezzard Charles, he retired in 1956 as the only undefeated heavyweight champion in history with a perfect 49-0 record and 43 knockouts. Yet on an ordinary day in 1969, his life would come to a tragic end in a domain where his strength and resilience offered absolutely no defense against the unforgiving elements. On August 31st, 1969, just a day prior to his 46th birthday, Rocky Marciano was in Chicago, visiting the home of STP racing executive Andy Granatelli. It was a gathering of high-profile figures, including 37-year-old Glenn Bells, a construction company president, and 28-year-old Frankie Farrell, the son of a longtime family friend, Louis Thomas Fratto. Frankie had invited Rocky to make a brief appearance in Des Moines, Iowa, to support the credibility of his new insurance business. Rocky had planned for this to be a quick errand, intended to get him back to his home in Florida in time for his own surprise birthday celebration with his family. Fortunately, Glenn, who was also a private pilot, had brought along his plane, which was parked at the Chicago Midway Airport not far from the venue. Rocky wasn't a pilot himself, but he was a man who trusted his circle, and as the afternoon wore on, the group made preparations to depart in Glenn's green and white painted 1967 Cessna 172, a four-seater light aircraft. Before the departure, Glenn received a weather briefing from flight service personnel informing about the storm clouds ahead. Glenn was a man of ambition, but his credentials as a pilot were, at best, rudimentary. He had a private license with only 231 hours of total flight time, most of which had been logged in clear and favorable daytime conditions. He lacked the specialized training required for instrument flying, which is a critical skill set needed when cloud, rain, and darkness makes the pilot unable to see the horizon. Upon learning that storm clouds were forming along their intended route, Glenn decided to get ahead of the weather, and the three immediately rushed to the airport. Under visual flight rules, a pilot must maintain visual contact with the ground at all times. So a pilot facing a cloudy situation has basically two options: either find a safe altitude to fly below the clouds, or decide to wait for better conditions. And we all know that they didn't choose the latter. At around 6 p.m. local time, the trio departed Chicago's Midway Airport with Glenn at the controls, Frankie seated beside him, and Rocky in the passenger seat. During that time, the pilot was strictly requested to navigate by looking out the window at the ground, yet as their aircraft headed west, the sky started to change, with dark, heavy storm clouds appearing and blocking their path. The meteorology of that evening suddenly turned worse, with low clouds, drizzle, and fading daylight that made the navigation of a small, single-engine aircraft a high-risk gamble. While Rocky sat in the cabin, perhaps assuming the journey as manageable as any other, the man at the controls was starting to lose the essential visual cues that keep an aircraft on a steady path. As time passed, the conditions grew significantly more treacherous. Under normal circumstances, for a seasoned instrument pilot, this would have been a standard challenge, but for Glenn, it was an impossible obstacle. By 8:50 local time, the atmospheric visibility had dropped to a dangerous minimum, and Glenn found himself unable to locate the destination lights of Des Moines. He immediately radioed for help, reporting in an anxious tone that he was caught in heavy downpour and couldn't see anything. The controller identified the aircraft's position, informing him that he was approximately 30 miles east of Des Moines, and further suggested that they look for the lights of Newton in Iowa to attempt an emergency landing. For a pilot with limited training in instrument flight, this transition is the beginning of a death spiral. Without the visual cues of the ground, the human brain starts to interpret sensations of movement that are not actually occurring, leading to a profound state of spatial disorientation. In that situation, the pilot may believe he's flying straight and level, while the plane is actually banking, diving, or spiraling towards the earth. As Glenn maneuvered the plane over the dark, rolling hills, the aircraft became increasingly difficult to control in the turbulent air. Witnesses on the ground later reported seeing the Cessna flying at a dangerously low altitude, with its engine sputtering and wings banking in a jerky fashion. At around 9:05 p.m. local time, the aircraft struck a large oak tree in a remote wooded area in the southwest of Newton Airfield. The impact was catastrophic, which sheared off the wing and caused the structure of the Cessna to disintegrate as it tumbled across the uneven farmland for approximately 250 feet. The engine was torn from the nose of the plane, and the fuselage came to rest at the creek bed. Following the disappearance of Rocky's flight, an immediate search effort was launched, involving local law enforcement, civil defense, and private citizens. And because the crash occurred in a dark, rural, wooded area near Newton, Iowa, the search was instantly hampered by the lack of precise location. After hours and hours of efforts, authorities discovered the wreckage with an engine and nose buried deep in the ground from the impact. While Glenn and Frankie were thrown clear of the wreckage, Rocky remained trapped beneath the heavy, mangled remains of the aircraft. After securing everyone, it became clear that there was no room for any doubts. And just like that, Rocky Marciano was pronounced dead at the scene at the age of 45. The Jasper County medical examiner who handled the autopsies later concluded that all 3 men died almost instantly, with a primary cause being a massive blunt force trauma. A subsequent investigation by the NTSB ultimately found no mechanical faults with the Cessna. Instead, the final report attributed the cause to pilot error, particularly citing the pilot's decision to continue flying under VFR into IFR weather conditions, which led to a loss of control caused by spatial disorientation. In the wake of the disaster, the news shocked the nation that viewed Rocky as an invincible monument of American sports. On September 6, 1969, his funeral was held at the St. Gregory Great Catholic Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which was reportedly attended by family, legendary fellow boxers, and devastated fans who had idolized his perfect 49-0 record. The news in particular was a major shock for another legendary boxer, Muhammad Ali, who had become friends with Rocky during the filming of the hypothetical super fight, where they sparred to provide data for a computer simulation of who would win if they met in their primes. When he served as a pallbearer at the funeral, he was observed with tears in his eyes, a testament to the genuine bond they had formed during their brief time together. In the months that followed, tributes poured in from around the world, ranging from the highest echelons of professional boxing to simple fans in his hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, who established a massive, heroic bronze statue to commemorate their icon. Plus, his untimely passing was marked by an outpouring of cinematic documentaries and magazine specials that cemented his legend, ensuring that his name would never fade from the culture memory. In the later years, the fascination with his life grew exponentially, much like the posthumous surge in popularity seen with other legendary performers. The legacy he left behind, his integrity in the rings, and his humble roots solidified his place in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Looking back on his life, it's sad to think about the further success he might have had if not for that tragic night. His record, an untouchable 0 in the loss column, stands as a final statement against a world that eventually caught up to him. He was a man who conquered the world with his fists, but met his end at the hands of unforeseen elements. He once said, "To win takes complete commitment of mind and body. When you can't make that commitment, they don't call you a champion anymore." And to many, he remained a champion until the very end. And though his journey ended far too soon, the echoes of his heart, which beat for family, for grit, and for the unrelenting pursuit of excellence, will resonate for as long as people dream of greatness. So, rest in peace, Rocky Marciano.